let's start off by trying to understand the difference between climate and the weather, because people use both of them interchangeably as if they're exactly the same thing, and they're not the same thing. Even I know that, but I couldn't tell you the difference. I just know they're not the same.
Climate is weather trends over a long period of time. Um, the alarmists just now are prone to quote individual weather events and say the weather outside's terrible, therefore it must be because of climate change, which is not right. We need to look at least 30 years for a trend happening. And if you look back on, say, the time of the late Queen's life, the first 20 or 30 years of that, or her reign rather, the first 20 or 30 years of that, there was global cooling. And sometimes some scientists were saying we were going back to the Little Ice Age, which ended about 1820. Then we had global warming from about 1975 to the end of the century. And then there was a period of about 15 years of what the UN called a hiatus, when the global warming stopped. Now, that's very difficult to work out a trend. We can look back to 1820 and compare that to today, and we know that the temperature, according to the UN, has increased by 1.09 degrees on average. That doesn't seem too bad, and they can't explain these variations in the climate, which must be caused by natural factors. They call them anomalies, which just means we don't understand it.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So let's get this straight. Climate change is real.
The climate changes.
And that, for me, that's the history of the Earth, because the climate has changed, constantly changing. And that's why, for an example, that's why we have polar bears, because polar bears were brown bears and the climate changed and they had to adapt to their new setting. We've had civilizations rise and fall due to climate change. We've had invasions across Europe because peoples have come in thousands of years ago, because where they were, the climate changed. The climate is changing all the time. So when people say the climate, not meaning you personally, but when people use the word climate denier, I don't think hardly anyone's a climate denier, because we know it's changing. There's two questions there. The first question is it changing more now because of man's influence, or are we just in natural cycles that we just don't understand?
The simple answer is both. The Charney range, which is the classic study of this, puts the anthropogenic element of doubling carbon dioxide in the atmosphere as a warming of somewhere between 1.5 and 4.5 degrees centigrade. I happen to think, from what I've read, that it's at the bottom end of that, or perhaps even slightly less. It might just be about one degree centigrade. But there are natural cycles, as you say. You talk about the polar bears, and we're supposed to believe that the polar bears are all dying out. But in the 30-year melting phase of Arctic ice that has finished about 10 years ago, polar bear numbers rose from about 5,000 to 30,000. The reason being we stopped shooting them in 1973. So, you know, there are certain things that where white is black and black is white that the alarmists tell us about. We can also look at studies that the UN ignores, like shellfish remains in sediments in the Arctic, which show that we came out of the last major ice age 12,000 years ago. The Holocene maximum was 9,000 years ago, so that was the warmest. It was 4 degrees warmer in the Arctic 9,000 years ago than it is today. And in between then, the climate has gone up and down. We've had warm periods, like the Iron Age warm period, the Roman warm period, the medieval warm period, and we've had cold periods, the coldest of which was the Little Ice Age, which is the coldest time in the last 10,000 years.
Yeah, and just look at some of our recent history. It wasn't that long. It was only over 100 years ago. Every Christmas, people in London used to ice skate on the Thames because it was frozen over. I remember in the 1970s being told by Blue Peter that there's a mini ice age coming, and the only way to stop it is to send in our milk tops, our tinfoil milk tops, and that's what we did. And the ice age didn't come, so I take some credit for that. I think me sending my milk bottle tops, whatever that did, it saved the mini ice age from coming. And almost every prediction we've had about the climate has just not come to pass. I'm not saying they were wrong, and I'm not saying there's a hidden agenda behind any of this. What I'm saying is it's so complicated that we still don't understand how the planet works. So, we were told the ice caps are going to melt and disappear, and the glaciers in Switzerland are going to disappear. None of that's happened. We were told about the Mauritius Islands are all going to disappear. They're actually growing. We were told the Great Barrier Reef was disappearing. It's the strongest it's ever been now. And things go up and things go down. These are natural cycles we don't understand. That's not to say we don't try to reduce the impact man's having on the earth, because we've damaged lots of things as mankind. So we need to reduce that. But it's the end of days scenario and agenda that I really, really disagree with.